the pattern. The technician within sees the work. The manager within just gets pissed off. So I started my meeting with Bob and began to ask him questions, the only thing I could do. And I swear over that hour, a transformation took place. Didn't know anything, but I discovered Bob knew less. He owned a business. I didn't. What I knew is selling is a system. I'd learned that selling encyclopedias. You might say to me, what in the world does selling encyclopedias have to do with selling high-tech whatever? You have no idea how similar they are. They're exactly the same thing. So when we got done with our meeting, and when I suddenly realized that Bob really had a problem, that Bob really didn't understand, and that Bob was the biggest single opportunity I had ever faced in my life, Bob said, "Can you help me?" And I said, hear this, of course I can. How did I know that? How did I know that? Understand, for years I'd been what my mother called a wandering Jew. Was a wandering Jew looking for my passion, looking for my purpose. I was a saxophone player, I was a hippie, I was a beatnik, I was a this, I was a that. I did everything and I did nothing, and I was continually searching for this magic holy grail that was going to suddenly reveal itself, but never did. Not this, not that, not this, not that. Even after 12 years of mastering the saxophone, I suddenly came face to face with the fact I didn't want to be a musician. I'm a late learner. And that's cool. Because I felt it. And when you feel it, something is speaking to you. A perfect stranger is speaking to you. And in my case, it was the entrepreneur who woke up big time in Bob's office when I suddenly saw the biggest single opportunity I'd ever seen in my life. And it came to me in that moment when both of my assumptions were turned on their ear. He owns a business, but he doesn't know anything about business. And he doesn't know what I do, and I've never been in business. He's never had a master. He couldn't have. He's never learned the fundamental lessons that are so critical to doing anything anybody wishes to do. And so I started to help Bob, and he was my first client, and then my second, and then my fifth, and then my ninth, and I suddenly came face to face with the reality that Bob wasn't the only one who had this problem. Every single small business I walked into had identically the same problem. Bob never even imagined he could successfully sell what he needed to sell by creating a turnkey system to sell it. I showed him he was wrong. Bob thought he needed sales engineers to sell his product, people who really know the product. And I demonstrated to him it's exactly the opposite of what he needed. He simply needed someone who was willing to master the system. What system? The system we created. Out of what? Out of our entrepreneurial imagination. Out of the Imagineer that woke up in me and began to ask the essential questions that nobody seemed to be asking everywhere I went. It was astonishing to me, ladies and gentlemen. Astonishing to me. First I was this, and now I'm that. How in the hell does that happen? You have to be available. Are you available? Is anybody in this great, great outdoor sanctuary available? If I never see you again, what I'm going to share with you in this limited time I have is not a secret. It is so obvious for anybody who looks and is open to see. And it's so tragic that so many people own a small business. Doing it, busy, beating their brains out day after day, never, ever going to realize the Holy Grail, the magic on the hill, or anything even like it. It's just a job, the worst job in the world, because you're working for a lunatic. Please don't take this personally. Created a turnkey system for Bob, and then Jerry, and then Mary, and then Smitty, and then Judy, and then this one, and then that one. And even when I did that, suddenly we came to the realization that not only didn't they know that selling is a system, but they didn't realize that management is a system. They didn't even know that marketing is a system. They didn't know that anything was a system because they didn't think systemically. The universe is a system, ladies and gentlemen. You come face to face with the reality that everything is connected. And if you do this, that changes, and that changes, and that changes. Everything is changed by one decision. Your life is a universe. And what does that mean? And why is that important? Because nobody can be free until they realize that. Because nobody can be free until they come face to face with that. Because nobody can transform his or her life, let alone his or her company, until he transcends his life, her company. The entire reality is it just happens like that, and you suddenly see it because every bit of you is awake and alive to it, because you're seizing a day that everybody else is asleep to. As I went from client 1 to client 2 to client 3 to client 4, Ace's company grew. We began to discover the truth about business, which wasn't a secret. It isn't a secret. It's the most amazing thing to see, however, because it's facing you everywhere you look. I suddenly realized that what had happened in all of these small businesses had been like the owner of the business, the founder of the company. How many of you own your own business? The owner of the business, the founder of the company, wasn't an entrepreneur at all. Well, what I've come to call a technician suffering from an entrepreneurial seizure. Made the fatal assumption, because I understand how to cook, I understand how to run a business that cooks. If I understand how to be an accountant, I understand how to build a business that does accounting. If I understand how to fix a car, I understand how to build a business that fixes cars. And it's 180 degrees from the truth. Knowing how to do the work of a business has nothing to do with building a business that works. And the technician suffering from an entrepreneurial seizure builds the business around him or her. I am my business, they say proudly. And I look at them and say, what a tragedy that you'd believe that to be true. At eMyth Worldwide, which I founded in 1977, we built a turnkey system to transform any small business. Build a turnkey system to transform any small business into a thing of beauty. Since I founded the company not knowing how to do what to do, I simply pursued it with the kind of passion that I pursued everything in my life. But I suddenly realized the power of it. The power of it was that we could transform the lives of millions upon millions upon millions of people who own and operate businesses around the world. As I told you also, eMyth Today, with its eMyth Mastery program, its ability to truly transform any business in this room, no matter whether it's high-tech, low-tech, no-tech, doesn't make any difference. No matter where you are, no matter what you sell, no matter what you do, no matter how you do it, what we discovered are there universal truths about business that apply to every single kind of business. Everybody told me I was nuts. Everybody told me you can't do that. Everybody told me that's impossible. Everybody told me every business is different. Everybody told me every market is different. Everybody told me every product is different. Everybody told me every service is different. And the truth was, I knew they were wrong. I don't know how I knew, but I don't need to know how I knew. Because it came to me and I trusted it. I trusted what I heard him say. Today, eMyth is serving clients in 145 countries around the world. Over 66,000 small business clients have transformed their lives. And I started it not knowing anything about anything other than what my masters taught me. No, not that way, this way. No, not that way, this way. And trust your intuition. Trust it. Trust your passion. Trust that part of you that is singing this extraordinary song that says, holy shit! Can I believe that? And so we did it. Step by step by step by step. We went to work on the company, not in the company. I didn't start the company to become a coach. We weren't in business for 2 years before I stopped working with clients entirely. I built a coaching system that novice coaches were trained to use, just like my masters taught me. No, not that way, this way. No, not this way, that way, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, all at the cost of a minimum wage kid. There was nobody who owned a business who could say, I can't afford what you do. Nobody. That was the point of it. Accessible. You can't do that, everybody said. I'm here to stand as a testimony to the fact that not only can you, but we did. And we've been teaching countless thousands of small business owners through our programs and countless millions through my books and tapes and seminars and so forth and so on to do exactly what I'm sharing with you here. And I came face to face with what was missing in all those small businesses, which is what turned the key. It was like every single one of those small business owners, before I started my company, had gone out and bought a jigsaw puzzle. And everybody here knows what's on the cover of a jigsaw puzzle box. What is that? The picture of the finished puzzle. And it was like every single owner of every business I walked into had bought the box, opened it up, spilled all the pieces on the floor and thrown away the cover. There was no vision of what the business was going to look like when it was finally done. Please hear this. There was no picture in their mind of their exit strategy. There was no picture of what the company was going to look like, act like, feel like, be like when it was finally done. There was no clear, perfect picture of the result. There was no great idea in any of those small businesses. They're just people who preferred to work for themselves rather than for somebody else. Doing it, busy, beating their brains out, trying to get the job done. There was no soul in those businesses. There was no spirit in those companies. There was no passion for a result that would blow people's minds when they saw it. There was no brand of business. Do you understand, when we stand here in this seminar of the century, you're a testimonial to the fact of what I'm speaking about. Understand, the people who attracted you here, the company that attracted you to this event, have exactly what's missing in every single small business I've walked into for years and years and years and years. A brand, differentiation, a key personality, a way of looking at the world, a way of communicating it, A way of touching the hearts and minds of tens upon tens upon tens of thousands of people. Most people in small business would not even imagine putting on something like this. Think about it. When was the last time you put on something like this? And how come you wouldn't even dream of putting on something like this? Because there is no dream, there is no vision, there is no purpose, and there is no mission. Please don't take this personally. Just listen to me. I'm not beating you up, I'm waking you up. No small business needs to stay small. And no technician suffering from an entrepreneurial seizure will ever create a great company. And so what do they do instead? They go to work every day. They go to work every day. They open the doors, they close the doors, they clean the floors. They go to the bank, they hire somebody, they fire somebody. They solve problems, they solve problems, they solve problems. Anybody here solve problems every day? Do the problems go away? No. Why? Because problems don't go away ever, ever, ever without a dream, without a vision, without a purpose, without a mission. Please hear me. What I found missing in all those companies and what supported us in our odyssey in attempting to solve the problems of small business worldwide once and for all, without knowing anything about how to do it, was to pursue the question. To pursue the question. Please write this down. What's the question? What's the question? What's the question? Please say it. Please say it again. Good. It's not a question of what's the answer. The answer is irrelevant. It's what's the question. Discover the question, and you'll discover the meaning of life. Now you think, sitting here, how presumptuous it would be from a 70-year-old, 71-year-old guy in a white suit saying to you in the most improbable way that the secret of life comes with a question. Who am I? Who am I? Who am I? And until that question lives within everything you do, nothing will make any difference, because all you'll discover are more problems, more problems, more problems, more problems. I'm here to say that your company, the business you started, is the most significant opportunity of your life, provided you see it. Provided you see it the way it is. So fast forward. Invented E-Myth worldwide. Wrote my first book, The E-Myth, Why Most Small Businesses Don't Work and What to Do About It. Was published in 1986, started the company in 1977. The book was an accident. A guy was sitting listening to a seminar I was doing called Key Frustrations in a Small and Growing Business and What to Do About Them. He came up to me afterward and he said, "Would you like to write a book?" And I said, "Sure, about what?" He said, "The seminar." I said, "Yeah, I'd love to do that." He said, "Well, let me go back to the publisher and see if we can do the deal." Came back, he said, "We did the deal." They gave me an advance on this little book. I'd never written a book. And I wrote it in 90 days. It was published 6 months later. And today, it's one of the top 5 most successful books on business in the world. How many of you read the E-Myth? Okay. Please, how many of you have not read the E-Myth? Oh, tragedy. I go around the world and I speak, and people come up to me constantly saying, "Michael, I just got to say this to you, just got to say this." And they all say the same thing. They look at me square in my face and they said, "Michael, you have changed my life." And I said, "And how did I do that?" "I read your book." Now hear me, it's not me. Do you understand? It just happened. I read your book. And always, this is what they say. Now, this is going to sound absolutely absurd, but they say, I have two favorite books, almost always. One is the Bible, and the second is your book. Now, they say that. You'll forgive me for... They say that. Now, why in the world do they feel that way? Because literally, by changing the way they think, everything they did became different. And the way I taught them to think was this. Just like my saxophone teacher told me, just like my carpenter told me, just like my sales manager told me. They didn't say it exactly like this, but this is what I learned. Go to work on your business, not in your business. Go to work on your life, not in your life. Transcend it, and then you can see it. If you can't transcend it, you will always be it. And if you are it, you're lost. If you are your company, you're lost. If you are your job, you're lost. If you are your career, you're lost. Extraordinary master taught me that lesson. The man's name was Gerber. Anybody heard of Gerber? Please raise your hands if you've heard of Gerber. It's amazing so few people have heard of Gerber. Anybody here heard of the work? Raise your hands if you've heard of the work. I'm not accustomed to doing this. I don't usually get intimate with the audience. You understand? I don't usually ask questions, but I'm asking a question. How many of you heard of the work? Please raise your hands. Oh my God. Go to work on it, not in it. Let me tell you a little story. When I was among those 12 clients in the very, very beginning, and it's beginning to get so frustrated because I'd walk into these little businesses and they're in total chaos. There's no order. I went from one business to another business and stopped on the way at McDonald's. Now, it tells you something about me. I had an epiphany, a life-transforming epiphany in that moment that I walked into McDonald's. I suddenly saw what was missing in every one of those businesses. I saw the product of Ray Kroc's imagination. Ray Kroc was the founder of McDonald's, but he didn't found it, he found it. Ray Kroc was a peddler of malted milk machines, multi-mixer malted milk machines, and he went to the McDonald brothers to sell them a multi-mixer malted milk machine. And he walked into McDonald's in San Bernardino, and his mind was blown. He couldn't believe his eyes. He was so taken by what he saw that he set about convincing the McDonald brothers to give him the franchise rights to McDonald's. And they did. And they gave him the franchise rights to McDonald's because they knew they weren't worth anything. Because I'd already tried to franchise McDonald's and failed. Please write this down. Experience is the worst teacher in the world. It tells you what you think you know, but it doesn't tell you what you don't know. And what the McDonald brothers didn't know, Ray Kroc did. And he had none of their experience. He saw it instantly. It was brilliant, absolutely brilliant. They gave him the franchise rights. He walked back to Des Plaines, Illinois, borrowed the money to start his first store. Now, whatever you think about McDonald's, I think you'd have to agree it's a relatively successful company. Ray Kroc went back, borrowed the money to start his first store, what he called his franchise prototype. But Ray Kroc didn't do what every single small business owner right here in this field did when you started your business. Ray Kroc didn't work in McDonald's. He didn't go to work in McDonald's. He didn't make a French fry, didn't make a malted, didn't make anything, whatever. Didn't do the work in the business. He hired people to do the work in the business because that wasn't his job. Ray Kroc went to work on the franchise prototype of McDonald's to perfect the system. The core operating system of that exquisite company that he set out in his mind and his imagination to do something nobody had ever set out to do before. Ray Kroc said, I'm going to create the most successful small business in the world. And by saying I'm going to create the most successful small business in the world, what Ray Kroc was saying, the little sucker is going to work perfectly, absolutely perfectly every single time. Does your business work perfectly every single time? No. But it could. If you did what Ray Kroc did, if you saw what Ray Kroc saw, if you imagined what Ray Kroc imagined. He built the perfect little franchise prototype. And then he got ready to franchise it. The franchisee would walk in the door and they'd want to see it and he'd say, not yet, let me tell you a story. Please write that down. Let me tell you a story. What's your story? Let me tell you a story. What's your story? The job of the entrepreneur is to tell a story. What story? The story of the vision, the story of the dream, the story of the mission, the story of the purpose, the story that differentiates my company from every other company in the world. The story that creates a brand. The story that's the heart of the soul of the spirit of this company. Just like the founder of Starbucks did. Just like the